මම මෙතනින් පහලට කතා කරේ නැහැ. ඒතර මෙන්න මේ components ටික ගැන කතා බහ කරන්න ඕනි. So says main components of the relational database model. So in the relational database model, like ඔයගලන්ට මතකයි relational database model එක like එක අපි කතා කරේ tables හදනවා. ඒ tables වලට primary keys පාවිච්චි කරලා foreign key concept එකයි primary key concept එකයි පාවිච්චි කරලා we are going to create the relationships. So that particular table is called a relation in the relational database model. Relation, not a relationship, just a relation. Table means a relation, right? And relation is having, in other words, the table is having a number of columns and there will be records as rows. So those columns are referred as fields, right? Or the fields are representing the attributes of your ER diagrams entities, right? Ekai api schema එක ලියන්නේ. So schema contains the entity name and the attributes regarding that and the cardinality solutions, right? So those attributes will become the columns or the fields, and the entity name will become the table name or the relation instead when we are referring to the relational database model. And we refer, or like there is a term called tuple, which refers to a single data row, right? Or that means ekapelia, right? So when you are having a table, right? Let's say this is SID, this is name, and this is address. So S001 Saman Kuttawa. So this particular thing is called a tuple, right? And the table is called, the entire table is called a relation. Right, so one specific column is called field, right? Right. So likewise, and a relationship means the actual relationship which happens in between the tables, right? So you will see when we are creating the relationships, those are being created in between the primary keys and the foreign keys. That's why primary key, foreign key concept is there, right? Okay. So then moving forward, there are some constraints as well. Now, constraints means these constraints will help us, or will help the users, or will help to the database creators, the administrators, to keep or to validate the certain kind of data when it is being inserted into the table, right? So constraint in simple terms, it is a limitation, right? So it will minimize the errors which can happen. So the first constraint is not null constraint. So not null constraint means preventing having an empty cell, right? Or an empty spot, right? ඒ කියන්නේ not null constraint එක දැම්මම මේ හැම column එකකම හැම cell එකක්ම not null apply කරලා තියෙන කෙනාගේ හැම cell එකක්ම fill වෙන්න ඕනේ. So these constraints again are applied to the fields, right? So constraints are applied the fields, right? In most of the cases, right? So when we are applying some constraint to some particular column, so it indicates this is the rule regarding this particular column. Then අපි ඉස්සරහට primary key එක හදාගෙන යනකොට අපි කතා කරනවා not null කියලා. right? ඒතර not null කිව්වම එකකින් indicate වෙනවා primary key එක හිස්ව තියෙන්න බෑ කියන. right? If you have not defined the not null constraint, it means it can have empty values or empty cells, or it can contain a value, right? And we can use the unique constraint to indicate that this particular column or this particular field is going to have unique values. Then අපි primary key කියලා constraint එකක් ඊළඟට කතා කරනවා. Primary key constraint එක by default have the not null constraint and the unique constraint. මොකද primary key කියලා කියනකොටම ඒක indicate වෙනවා මෙයා හිස් වෙලා ඉන්න බෑ, මෙයාට unique values තියෙන්න ඕන කියන. But if we need some other columns like email address, let's say like NIC, right, national identity card numbers, if we got those kind of columns, so those columns should specially have the constraint called unique constraint to prevent the duplicate values inside it. මොකද ඒවට අපි primary key constraint එක දෙන්නේ නැහැ. primary key කියලා අපි තෝරගන්නේ නේද? අපිට හොඳයි කියලා හිතෙන හොඳම unique field එක තමයි අපි තෝරගන්නේ. so ඒතර තව දේවල් තියෙන්න පුළුවන් unique වෙන්න ඕනේ. අන්න ඒ වගේ columns අපි define කරනකොට we use unique constraints, right? so it says this particular thing should be unique. And again remember, then make a unique constraint එක තිබුණා කියලා NIC එක දානකොට unique එක අනිවාර්යෙන් දාන්න ඕනේ කියලා නීතියක් නැහැ. ඒක අපේ requirement එක. right? අපේ උවමනාවට තමයි අපි මේ දේවල් ටික constraint apply කරන්නේ. හැබැයි like there are some constraints which you have to use anyway, like primary key constraint. primary key එකක් පාවිච්චි කර primary key එක assign කරනකොට primary key constraint එක automatically පාවිච්චි වෙනවා. foreign key එකක් පාවිච්චි කරනකොට foreign key constraint එක automatically අපිට පාවිච්චි කරන්න වෙනවා. right? so we have primary key constraint, unique constraint to make a particular column, a data column or a field set as a column which contains only the unique values, right? And when it comes to the primary key constraint, again this defines what is the primary key of this table majorly, and then like indirectly it says it is unique and not null. And later with the foreign key constraint, the primary key will help us. The primary key will help us to create a relationship in between two tables. මොකද අපි foreign key එකක් කියලා define කරන්නේ, foreign key means a primary key staying in another table as a normal field. Then those two will create a relationship. So it's going to be something like this. Now if you got a table which has SID, name, an address, and there is another table. This is the student table, let's say, and this is the class table. Now let's take the desk table, which according to your example which we have done earlier in the ER diagram. So this has DID and a color. Right now one particular student is having one particular table, so it's one-to-one relationship. So we know when we are like creating the schema, we are going to duplicate this one of the primary keys inside the other table. So here I'm going to have SID right over here, right? So for the student table, this is going to be the primary key, and for the desk table, this is going to be a foreign key. right? So this is what you call primary key and foreign key. Now, if you want the relationship, you are going to have relationship with referring to these two things. කියන්නේ ඔයගලන්ට බොහොම සරලව කිව්වොත් මෙතන මම data එකක් දැම්මොත් 001 සමාන කොට්ටාව කියලා මෙතන තියෙනවා නම් D01 red, this is 001. Then මෙහෙම තිබ්බොත් විතරයි you will be able to find the color of the summons desk, right? මේ SID එක මෙතන නොතිබුණා නම් last column එක මෙතන නොතිබුණා නම් මේ column එක මෙතන නොතිබුණා නම් you won't be able to find who owns the D01 desk, right? ඒකයි අපිට primary key and foreign key කියන concept එක වැදගත් වෙන්නේ to have the relationship. දැන් ඔයගලන්ට SQL වල queries කියලා එකක් එනවා. එතනදී queries ලියන්න ගියාම අපි අන්තිමටම කතා කරනවා joins කියලා එකක් ගැන. JOINS JOINTS නෙවෙයි ළමයි. joins. So when you are doing that, you need this references because you are using more than one particular table, right? Okay, so that is what is regarding the foreign key. So in the foreign key constraint, it defines a particular column is going to refer another column of another table. ඒකනේ foreign කියලා කියන්නේ. එක table එකක තියෙන column එකක් තව table එකක column එකක් refer කරනවා. So it's not just another column. It is going to be a primary key of that table. So එක table එකක තියෙන normal field එකක් තව table එකක primary key එක තමයි refer කරන්නේ. Right? So it will create the relationship between those two tables. Right? So එහෙම වුණාම ඔයගලන්ට තියෙන වැදගත්කම තමයි මේ foreign key primary key relationships තියෙන tables වල you won't be given the liberty to delete or update or edit things as you wish. It always keep the like the constraints, the limitations. Like if you are trying to delete a record, හිතන්නකෝ අපි මෙතනින් student delete කරන්න හදනවා කියලා. Saman කියන student delete කරන්න හදනවා. So when we are trying to delete this, the DBMS will give us a message. You can't delete this, or if you are deleting this, remember that you are having a relationship with the desk, and this desk is belongs to this particular student. So first of all, you have to get rid of this foreign key, or else you have to change that foreign key. Then you can delete this record. Right? මොකද reference එකක් තියාගෙන ඉන්නකොට දැන් මෙයා ගියොත් නිකමට සමන් කියන කෙනා එහෙම delete කරන්න දුන්නොත් without a constraint, then after desk id table එක refer කරනකොට D01 කියන එක පෙන්නන්නේ student කෙනෙකුට assign කළා කියලා. But that student is not in the school. Right? ඒක නිසා ඔය primary key foreign key ඔය කියන relationship එක maintain කරගන්න උදව් කරනවා. හරි. තේරුණාද? confirm කරන්න මට. Right. Okay, how about others? All right. Okay, so moving forward, then the check constraint. Now this check constraint is mostly checked on the data types, the ranges, right? Kind of things. Right? So actually, rather than data types, it's like maintains a range, right? So checking whether it is in a particular data type and with the particular range when it is inserted into the a table, right? So it sets restriction on data added to a specific table, right? For example, table checks constraint can ensure that the salary level for an employee is at least 20,000 whenever salary data is added or updated in the table containing personal information. So අපි check constraint එකක් දීලා තිබ්බම if we said something very similar to this, salary එක 20,000 තමයි minimum කියන එක කියපුවම we won't be able to insert a value less than 20,000. The database will alert us. This cannot be, the salary should be something greater than or equal to 20,000. So in other words, it will minimize the errors. දැන් මොකද typing mistake වෙන්න පුළුවන් නේද? 20000යි තියලා type කරන එකට 2000 කියලා type වෙන්න පුළුවන්. You can miss a zero, right? But if you do not have the constraint, it will record it. If you have the constraints, it will alert you. You are inserting an invalid details, right? Okay, so then after they are talking about the database management system. So database management system, we in short form we are referring it as DBMS, and it gives you the whole package, like creating the database, maintaining the database, deleting any data, updation, everything can be done by there, and many different kind of and massive kind of things can be done through the DBMS. It's a one big software which will facilitate us to manage our data in the tables, right? And most of the DBMSs are providing you a interface for you to manage with it. So like now, if you take the MySQL, this is going to be your interface, which is a little bit complex at the very first moment. And if you think about the MS Access, it is going to be something like this. So like we can create a database, or we can open a database that we have. So it is giving some tools, so we can create tables, and there are a lot of components inside it. So likewise, we will be able to manage it, right? So yes. හරි, අපිත් එක්ක දැන් එකතු වුණේ කවුද? මට චුට්ටක් ඉන්ඩිකේට් කරන්න නම. හරි, මට පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්ඩිකේට් කරලා තියන්න නම. දැන් කනෙක්ට් වෙච්ච දුව හරි පුතා හරි. Right, so so that is the way of access is there, and this is the way of MySQL, but we have to work with MySQL. That is what they have said in your syllabus, right? And yes, so moving forward, so there are many different databases where you can see MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, IBM DB2. There are a lot of things, right? Even cloud-based things also there, right? And regarding the components of the DBMS, there are these types of components like hardware, software, data, procedures, and data access language. So like hardware means the particular hardware that contains the database. So we can say it's the hard disk mainly. Like if you are maintaining it inside a external hard disk or a pen drive or something, still you can. When it comes to the cloud-based database, so that hard disk or the infrastructure is given from the cloud, right? And again, when we are running running a particular DBMS, the RAMs and ROMs will help us to manage the DBMS as well. When it comes to the software, it's the software that we saw, like Access, MySQL. It is the interface. It is the program which provide us the interface, provide the user the interface, so he or she will be able to interact with it, having a minimal hassles, right? And when it comes to the data, it is the most important thing inside the database, which we use to store using the tables. So these data can be categorized into two different things. The first thing is the actual data that we are going to store inside this, like this 001, Saman, Kotta, and all these things. So those are called data. And there is another thing called metadata, which we define as data about data, right? Again, if you take this address, you can have data about this address. You can say it is address, and there is a data type called vacha, and it can contain 25 characters inside it, right? And this is having not null constraints. So this is what you referred as what you call metadata. So it is data about the data, right? So those type of data is there for you to understand. And there are procedures, like procedures are referred to general instructions to use database management system. Like there are different kinds of procedures, like how to log in it, how to install it, and how to log out from it, how to manage it, so how to generate a report. So those type of procedures will be there, right? Which we are going to learn how to do that. And to execute, or like to carry out the procedures, we need a data access language, right? So in our case, we call this the SQL, structured query language. So using this data access language, in short from DAL, we get to know how to create a new database, how to create new tables, how to insert data, how fetch some data from one table or from like several tables, right? So it is the data access language. And the users, of course, the database administrator is the one who is having the highest privileges regarding this DBMS. And the other people, like the operators and the application programmers and software developers, they will be the one who's managing, like they are having less privileges, access privileges than the database administrator, but greater privileges than the end users. So end users are the people who are having the least privileges in the database access hierarchy. So like if you take ATM machine as an example, so the bank ATM machine is a network, and we are accessing to the database through the ATM machine, where it contains all our details regarding the accounts. So in the bank, in their staff, there is a person or group of people who are administrators of the database. So under them, there will be developers and application programmers who are given the privileges up to some extent to develop the things on behalf of the to get ease the user, or benefit the customers. And we as the customers are visiting to the ATM machine and interacting with the database through an interface which is developed by the software developer. So when it comes to the end user, like I said, we are the people who are having the least access privileges, which just do such things, right? Some certain things, so which will change the database indirectly, not directly through the interface. It will gather the detail and will update or edit the database. So these are the people that is involved in this database management system. So then from here onwards, we are going to talk about the SQL. So like SQL stand for structured query language, right? And this is a very common language that used to access the DBMSs, right? So these DBMSs are yeah, these DBMSs are widely used and accessed through this, and as well, excuse me, sorry, and as well, there are different groups inside this structured query language where they address as DQL, DML, and DDL. Right, so DQL is stand for data query language. So query means a request that we are sending to the database. So we do it using the select statement. So you will get to know about that very soon. And DML is about deleting, inserting, and updating data manipulation language, right? So when you need to manage the data, we use DML, data manipulation language. And DDL stands for data definition language. So which we say how to create a database, how to create a table, how to alter a table structure, right? That is regarding the definition, table structure, right? And how to drop a table, those kind of things, right? So these three categories are to be learned through this SQL language. So let's see how we are going to do it. So very first, we are going to talk about data definition language, right? The DDL part. And in there, you are given the instruction how to create this table, right? Okay, so to create the table, now remember when it comes to the SQL language, now this belongs to the 4th generation languages. That means the effort towards the user is minimized, and we are just giving the instruction to the program, and the program execute itself to carry out what we are asking that program to do, right? So now this is like we are just talking to the program, like we are saying something to the program. So this is very closer to the talk in English, but talking in a little bit different manner, right? So as you can see, if I need to create a table, I'll refer it through the examples right over here. For each and every statement, I have given you the examples. So through the example, it is very easy for you, easy for me to explain things for you. And above it, I have given you the syntax, and you can clarify the syntax once we talking through the example. So here they are asking us to create the customer table. So the table name is customer. So first they have used two words, which is create table, right? These are two words. Create is a one word, table is a one word, and those are keywords, right? So which we must use to create a table. So create table, so it understand, okay, this particular user is telling me to create a table, and then we have to give a table name. So when you are giving a table name, be sure to give it without space. If you need to have a space, use an underscore instead, right? So customer, let's say customer, if you need to write customer details, we can say customer underscore details, right? So however, you can give some name to this, and you should open a bracket then after. Then you have to describe what is the first field, what is the name of the first field, then put a space, and then you have to clear or clarify what's going to be the data type of it. And there are several data types where we have to say how many characters are going to be there with that particular data type. So when it comes to the data types, I will show you where the data types are, right? So I'm scrolling down to the end of this SQL part. So at the page number right over here, by page number 20, what it is this? Yeah, by the page number 29, I have given you the data types in SQL. So like there are numeric data types like big int, int, small int. I have given the ranges as well, tiny int, those kind of things. But we generally we are using int type to define a number. Excuse me. And as well as for the date and time data types, date time, small date time, just date, just time can be used, right? And regarding characters, that means strings, right? We can use char, varchar, right? And varchar max and text as well, right? So we in most of the cases we are using char and varchar, right? So like it says a fixed length non-unicode characters, like the things that are going to store inside the database are going to be stored in non-unicode matter. So don't worry about what is non-unicode and unicode. So in simple terms, when it comes to the database, it is using some different data representation method than Unicodes, right? So char and varchar stand for the character and variable character, right? So that means you can have a fixed characters inside this and you can have variable characters inside this. That means like if it says char, like you have to like store the things with the given range, or like if it's a 10, you have to store with 10 characters. Otherwise it will be having like it will fill up to 10 characters. Varchar you can change. So if you say 20, you can manage from 0 to 20, right? So likewise. And the string data types, nchar, nvarchar, and all these things. The previous one is the character string. This is just string, Unicode character strings, right? So you can have nchar and nvarchar where you can use Unicodes to store the data. And binary data types, we are not really going into these things, but just get to know, right? මේ data types ඔක්කොම මතක තියාගන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. අපි නිතරම පාවිච්චි වෙන ටිකක් මතක තියාගමු. සහ when it comes to the examination, they are not searching like they are not asking the questions like what is the correct data type of the regarding MySQL. ඒ විදිහට MCQs test කරන්නේ නැහැ. Because this MySQL, there are many approaches to MySQL, right? සමහර තැන්වලදී පොඩ්ඩක් controversial වෙන තැන් තියෙනවා data type සම්බන්ධයෙන්. So therefore they are not going forward check the data types, but they will give something like this, a fixed thing, and will ask මොන type එකේද මේගොල්ලෝ මෙයාට instant එකක් දෙන්නේ විදිහට question කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? And the approximate numeric data type like to store the floating point values like float and real, those kind of things will be there. So that is at the end of the SQL part. Then we are starting the ER, which we have done already. So I'm moving forward again, moving upwards again. So the first example, creating a table. So create table, customer, first name, and the what you call the data type of the particular field, right? Hari ඔගොල්ලෝ යන්න ඕනේ workbench එකට. right, workbench එකට ගියා. මම හදපු schemas දෙක තියෙනවා. මම මගේ db connection කියන schema එක click කරන. එතකොට මේ schema එක නෙමෙයි instance එක. එතකොට මේ මේක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පිළිවෙල එක මේක යන right instant එකක් හදලා instant එක ඇතුලේ schemas අපිට ඕන තරම් හදන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර අලුත් instant එකක් හදන්න අවශ්‍ය නම් ඔයාලට මේක ක්ලික් කරලා මෙතනට දෙන්න පුළුවන් instant එකේ නම් අපි මෙතනට අලුත් තව instant එකක් දෙන්නකෝ. student instance right කියලා මට කනෙක්ෂන් එක ටෙස්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට මම ඉන්ස්ටෝල් කරනකොට දීපු පාස්වර්ඩ් එක ඉල්ලනවා. මම මගේ පාස්වර්ඩ් එක දෙනවා admin කියලා දුන්නේ. දීලා ඕකේ කරනවා. ඕකේ කරාම හරි විදිහට කනෙක්ෂන් එක හැදෙනවා. right ඊට පස්සේ මට මෙතන ඕකේ කරන්නයි තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කරාම student instance කියලා මේක හැදෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ තියෙන මේ student instance කියන එක ක්ලික් කරන්න. ක්ලික් කරාම මට කෙලින්ම කියන්නේ ටයිප් කරන්න ඕන දැනට තමයි එන්නේ. right දැන් මම ඉන්නේ student instance කියන එකේ. දැන් මේ student instance කියන එකේදී අපි මේ කියන්නේ අපි database එක ඇතුලේ හදලා තියෙන database උත් ඔක්කොම මෙතන පෙන්නනවා. මම දැනට මෙයාව මෙතනින් remove කරන්න. මට පුළුවන් මේ drop schema කියන එක පාවිච්චි කරලා drop කරන්න. right drop කළා මම අලුතෙන් එකක් හදනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අලුතෙන් database එකක්. ඒකට අපි SQL වලදී refer වෙන්නේ schema එක කියලා. so අලුත් schema එකක් හදනවා. ඒකට මම දෙනවා student db කියලා apply කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට apply කරන්නද කියලා අහනවා. අපිට SQL statement එක ඒගොල්ලෝ ලියලා දෙනවා. right එතකොට දීලා අපිට apply කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. so it's executed successfully කියලා වැටෙනවා. so we finish it. right ඒක finish කරාම අපිට මෙතන ආයෙසරයක් student db කියන එක පේන තියෙන කියන අපේ scheme එකට අලුතෙන් හදන schemas ටික එනවා. so once you expand this you can see the things tables views stored procedures functions there are many. We are basically working with the tables. Now we are going to create the tables, right? So first thing මෙයාව අපි default scheme එක විදිහට set කරගන්න ඕනේ. so you right click on this, right? you right click on the schema and set as default schema. මොකද නැත්තම් අපි අරගන්න SQL script run වෙන්නේ default scheme එක විදිහට තියෙන තැනට. right so I'm setting this as a default schema. so it is the default schema. default schema එක කරාම මෙයා පේනවද මේ bolded වෙලා highlight වෙනවා. right ඔතනින් පස්සේ අපිට පුළුවන් tables ටික create කරගෙන යන්න. අපිට දැන් මෙතනින් right click කරලා create table ඒ වගේ යන්නත් පුළුවන්. but අපි දැන් SQL හුරු වෙන නිසා what we are going to take is we are going to take a SQL script. SQL script එක ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ මෙතන තියෙන SQL plus mark එක තියෙන file එක click කරලා. so now it is a editing place. එතන මේක run කරාම ඒකේ status එක මේ පහලින් පෙන්නනවා. කොහොමද කියලා මේක run වුණාද කොහොමද කියලා දැන් මෙතන අර අපි drop කරපු එකයි student db එකට changes apply වෙච්ච එකයි පෙන්නවා. දැන් මම මෙතන ලියනවා create statement එක. how we are going to write the create statement in the way we find in our tut, right? හැබැයි අපි මේක ලියන්නේ මෙන්න මෙයාට අදාළවද මේ tables ටික තමයි අපි create කරගන්න හදන්නේ. දැන් මේක create කරගන්නකොට ඔයගලන්ට මේක blindly create කරගන්න පුළුවන්. පස්සේ primary key foreign key දාගන්න එන විදිහකට මම student table එක create කරනවා. sid කියන එක තමයි මගේ primary key එක. but මම create කරනකොටම sid primary key එක විදිහට දෙන්නේ නැහැ. I'm just creating these things, right? එනිසා මේ දෙන දෙපැත්තට අරගන්නම්. right so මගේ table එකේ නම student info. so I'm saying create table student underscore info. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේ table names create කරනකොට simple වලින්ම create කරන්න හුරු වෙන්න හේතුව තමයි මේ අපි query එක run කරනකොට අපිට ටටක් ගාලා type කරගන්න පුළුවන්. right සහ short form වුණාට කමක් නැහැ. right එතකොට මගේ මෙතන තියෙනවා SID, SNAME, address, DOB, gender, CID and fee. right so මම මෙතන create කරනවා mulimma SID. So this is the what you call the column name. මට තප්පරයක් දෙන්න font size එක ලොකු කරගන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා බලන්න. විදිහක් දැනට නැහැ. මම magnify එක දාගෙන කරන්නම්. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මේක clear. Right. Right. එතකොට create table student info SID definitely මම tables ටික කරගන්න ඕනේ. activity එක කරන්න. Right. Student info. So SID මම යාව ගන්නවා වාචා කියලා. චා කියලා ගමුනේ. චා within brackets මම දෙනවා යාගේ size එක 4යි කියලා. Right, then comma එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඔය විදිහට generally අපිට පුළුවන් field එකක් හදාගන්න. field එකේ නම data type එක චාවාචා පාවිච්චි කරනවා නම් characters කීයද කියලා අපි කියන්න ඕනේ. Right, then after ඊළඟ එකට අපිට ඕන තරම් පේලි පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ query එක අවසානයේ semicolon එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Right, so SID char4, then sname char මම එකට ගන්නවා 20 කියලා, comma right, then address char 20 කියන එක මම දෙනවා. Then DOB, date of birth, it's going to be on date type. එතනට size එකක් අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Then gender, it's going to be char. මම එක 1 කියලා දෙනවා. Then CID. Now this CID is going to be a foreign key, but here we are not going to clarify anything regarding that. So we just create that column. I'll tell you, there are two ways of writing it. We are going to discuss it next when we create this particular thing. So make up man char4 කියලා දෙනවා. So comma. And the very last one, it is fee, and I'm going to give it as an int. Integer කියලා මත තියෙන්නේ එක මට මතක නැහැ. අබ්බලම කොහොමද කියලා. Int, and I'm going to close the bracket and put the semicolon. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් හරි විදිහට type කරගත්තොත් අර red underlines ටික ඔයගලන්ගේ නැති වෙනවා. හරි, මම දැන් magnify එක පොඩි වෙලාවකට අස් කරනවා. හරි, right, now you can see I have written the what we call the SQL query. එතකොට අපි පාවිච්චි කළේ create table. Then after table name, we open the bracket and we written the name of the field, the data type of the field, and a comma. So that is the way of creating it. හරි මේ ලියපු දේවල් ටික තේරුණාද? confirm කරන්න. Right. Okay. Right, here we are going to execute this. Now, to execute this, you can use this flash mark, right? So, and then may run query කියන button එක press කරනවා. එතකොට මෙයා හරියට run වුණොත් මේ යටට තව line එකක් add වෙනවා executed successfully කියලා. Right? So here I'm running it. Run on it. Ah yes, now it's ran. Here it says, see, create table student info, this particular thing, and 0 rows affected, and ගියපු වෙලාවත් එයා define කරනවා. ඒතර මේක හරියට සිද්ධ වුණා කියන්නේ අපේ මේ student list එකේ tables කියන එකේනා යටතට දැන් එක්කෙනෙක් එන්න ඕනේ. Right? අපිට ඒකට මෙතන refresh කරගන්න වෙනවා. First thing, then මෙහෙම බැලුවම tables double click කරාට මුකුත් open වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So I'm refreshing this, like saying refresh all. See, now you are getting an arrowhead to the tables. So once I click it, you can see the student info. So once I select that thing, the student info details are shown here. අපි මෙයාගේ මේ views තියෙනවා එක එක. මෙතන තියෙන මෙන්න මෙයාගේ නම කෙලින් කෙලවරේ තියෙන. මෙයාගේ නම කෙලින් කෙලවරේ මෙතන තියෙනවා මේ වගේ icon එකක්. මෙයාව click කරාම මෙයා මොන වගේද කියන එක මේ පහලින් බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ තියෙන්නේ. SIDS name, address, job, gender, CID and fee. Right. මම දැන් දැනට මේකට data insert කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද මට අවශ්‍යයි අර references ටික හදාගන්න. Right. හරි. එතකොට ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ SQL ලියන්න තියෙන practicals වල තියෙන්නේ create student info table with primary and foreign key assignments කියලා. Right? ඒක නිසා මම දැම්ම ඕගොල්ලන්ට ඔය database query එක ලියන්න කියන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතිරි දේවල් ටික අපි චුට්ටක් කතා බහ කරලා කෙලින්ම ඇවිල්ලා ලියන්න පටන් ගමු. Right? හරි. Right. Moving to the tute again. Right. So we create this particular table, not this particular table, a table. Right. Then after, it's about altering the table. Right. So altering means then මෙතන alter කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ දැන් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දන්නවනේ alter කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ වෙනස් කරනවා කියන එක. So here altering means altering or changing the structure of the table. So when you are changing the structure of the table, you can change these kind of things. You can add a column. Column එකක් අලුතෙන් add කරගන්න පුළුවන්. You can drop a column. You can delete a column in a certain table. You can change the column name. Column එකේ නම change කරගන්න පුළුවන්. And you can change the data type of a column. Right? ඔන්න ඔය වැඩ හතර කරගන්න පුළුවන්. Structure එකක් database මේ table එකේ structure එක වෙනස් කරනවා කියන්නේ ওই ටිකට. Columns add කරන්න පුළුවන්, delete කරන්න පුළුවන්. Column එකේ පේන නම change කරන්න පුළුවන්. Column එකේ තියෙන data type එක change කරගන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So to do that, we are using alter table statement. So make a hurry lazy. Then like to create a table, we use create table. Then we say which table is going to create and what are the fields name, what is the data type. So put in commas and we define that how it's going to be. Now we are going to alter the table. So we use alter table and we say what is the table that I'm going to alter. And we have to say how it is going to alter. මොන විදිහටද මෙයා change වෙන්නේ කියලා. So that can be used by the alter specification. right? So alter specifications, there are 4 alter specifications. To add a column, you use add keyword. To drop a column, that means to delete a column, you use drop keyword. To change the column name, you use change keyword. And to modify the data type, you use modify keyword. Right? Add to add a column, drop to delete a column, change to change a column, and modify to modify the data type. Right? Okay, now how it's going to happen? මෙතන පහළ ඔයගලන්ට පෙන්නලා තියෙන examples. මේ SQL refer කරනකොට tut එක ආයි බලනකොට go through the examples වලින් ඔක තේරුම් ගන්න හරියම ලේසි. Right? මේක මේ සාමාන්‍ය මම කලින් කියවනේ සාමාන්‍ය ඉංග්‍රීසි කතා කරනවා වගේ කියලා. So it's very same. Now here they have said the table structure over here. This is the customer table structure. It has these kind of columns: first name, last name, address, city, country, and birth date. Those are 6 columns in there, and data types are being given. So in the first square, it says, first we want to add a column called gender. So here they don't have a column called gender. To this table, to do this, we key in. So see how it happens. Alter table, it says table is going to alter. What is the table? Customer, according to this example. And it says add. So you are going to add, now SQL can understand, they are going to add something, add a column. So you have to give the column name as well as what's the data type of that column is. Right? So alter table, the table name, add the newly added column name and the data type of it. Then the semicolon is going to be there. Right? So we are going to do this for our database. So in our database, there is SID, SNAME, address, DOB, gender, CID, and fee. So gender is already there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a column called NIC, National Identity Card Number, to this particular table. So I'm going to clear my SQL. And again, before I clear my SQL, I'll tell you like these files can be saved. අපිට save කරගන්න පුළුවන් පස්සේ වෙලාවක run කරගන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ මට අවශ්‍ය නම් database එක සම්පූර්ණයෙන් clear කරලා files import කරගෙන run කරලා ආයෙ database එක හදන්න පුළුවන්. Right? ඒ නිසා මම කෝකටත් මේ දේවල් ටික save කරගන්නවා. Right? I'm going to save the SQL file. Right? So I'm file and save script. Right? I'm going to my specific thing. So here I am saying creating student info table. So I have saved that. Right? So I can close it. And inside this, I'm going to run another thing. Right? So what I'm going to say is alter table student. Then make a type කරනකොට අපිට help එක දෙනවා. ඒක නිසා tab key කරාම එයාගෙන් අරගන්න පුළුවන්. alter table student info. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the NIC column. So add, it is my keyword, NIC, that is the new what we call the column that we are going to add. Then we are going to say what's the data type. So I'm going to say int. Right? Then I'm going to put a semicolon. So let's compare this with our the theory stuff. So it's the same thing, alter table. Here we have student info, add NIC, then the what you call the data type has given. So now I'm going to execute this. So here I'm executing it. So in the in here it says alter table student info, add NIC int. So alteration has happened, right? So if I now here it shows you what are the columns that is inside the student info. So if I refresh this first I have to refresh it. So refresh it all. So now since I am not selecting anything, you don't have any details over here. So I'm selecting the student info now. So now you can see NIC has added into the at the end of the table. And if I have the table structure here, see the NIC has added to the table structure. Hari, මේක තේරුණාද? Confirm කරන්න. Right, great. Hari, අනිත් අය? Right. ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. Hari. So I'm moving to the next one. So next one says, next we want to rename the address to ADDR. So they have a column called address ADDRESS in their structure. So they need to rename that. That means change the name of the column. So how it's going to be: alter table customer, that is the table name. Change is the keyword. Then they are going to say which column is going to change. So you should give the original column name first. Address is the column which is going to change. And then you have to say what is the new name it's going to get. So that means ADDR. As well as when you are giving the new name, you have to specify what is the data type is. Right? මොකද නමක් change කරනවා කියන්නේ SQL සලකනවා නම විතරක් නෙවෙයි, එයා අලුතෙන්ම හැදෙන කෙනෙක් විදියට. So you change the ADD address into ADDR with this particular data type, right? So in our example, what we are going to do is we are going to change, right? We are going to change it. We are going to change the NIC, let's say NIC into national IC, right? So I'm going to change NIC into national IC. So how I'm going to say is alter table so it's the student info that I'm going to change. So student info change. So I'm going to change the name of NIC column. So it is the new, this is the existing name, and the new name is going to be national IC. Then I'm going to give it as int again. Right? So how did we go through? Alter table. Table එක වෙනස් කරන්න. What is the table name? Student info. Change NIC, that is the existing name, into national IC, and the data type is int. So I'm going to run this. So let's say, yeah, so it is being changed. Alter table student info change NIC national IC int. So I'm again refreshing the things. And I'm going to view the student info. So here it shows national IC as the table, as the column header, which is the changed one. So the next part is showing you how to modify the data type of a particular column. So previously we talked about the name, changing the name. Here the modifying the data type. So modifying the data type, nothing's very different. Alter table, what is the table name? Then modify, they have used. Then the column name should be given. The existing column name should be given. And the new data type is going to give. Right? So let's do it to our national IC one. So I'm going to modify this particular thing. So I'm saying alter table student info, modify national IC, that is my what do you call the field name, the column name, and I'm changing this to char 30. Right? So for the moment, national IC contains int at the very end of the table. So here we are going to run this. So I'm running it. So let's see whether it is ran or not. Yeah, it happens. Hold on. Only 7 things are changed. Alter table student in for change, and I see no, that is not ran. But I think it ran. Yes, now it only ran. So alter table student info, modify national IC char 30. So still this shows national IC is int type. So I'm going to refresh it. And when I'm selecting my student info, it is having char 30. Right? And finally, we are going to drop this. So how we are going to drop it? Using the drop keyword. So alter table, the table name, drop, and what do you need to drop? The column name you should be given, right? Mona table ekada alter karanne, mona column ekada drop karanne, right? So it's easy. It's like the general English, right? So what I am saying here is alter table student info, that's the exact same thing, and I'm from here onwards I'm say drop national IC, it's give us the column and put a semicolon. So now I'm going to drop it. So I'm running the query. Yes, it has ran. So it has executed. It says alter table student info drop national IC. So still in here, you can see the national IC as the table information. So I'm going to refresh it. So once I refresh and select it, see you can't find the national IC column name in the table structure. Right? So that is how the alter specification works. Hari. මේ ගැන ප්‍රශ්න තියනවාද? නැත්නම් තේරුණාද මේක හරියට? confirm කරන්න. Right, how about others? Okay. All right. හරි. දැන් එතකොට ඔය දේවල් ටික මතක තියෙන්න ඕනේ. හොඳටම මතක තියාගන්න රිෆර් කරනකොට ටියුට් එකේ තියෙන examples ටික රිෆර් කරන්න කියන එක. Right? Right. Then moving forward, the primary key statement and the foreign key statement. එතන මේක කියලා දුන්නායින් පස්සේ ඔයගලන්ට පුළුවන් primary key foreign key කතාවත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන්න. right? හරි. දැන් මේක ටිකක් පරිස්සමට අහගන්න විදි දෙකක් තියෙනවා. අපිට පුළුවන් table එකක් create කරන වෙලාවෙදිම primary key එක establish කරන්න. හරි, ඒකට අපි ඊළඟ තව table එකක් create කරලා ඒකට primary key එක assign කරමු. Then already existing table එකකට primary key එකක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Hi, the first way that I have shown you is the making a particular column as a primary key. Right now here they are creating a table called customer again. It has SID, last name and first name. So SID is in integer, last name Vacha 30, first name Vacha 30. So these three things, like in the table there are only 3 columns. So a columns tuna hadala ivarai method. 3 columns have been made. Then after we are saying what is the primary key inside the primary key keyword statement. So we say create table. What is the table name? So within brackets we have defined what are the columns are. Then after we are saying, okay, primary key, like after the very last column specification, there is a comma again. So then using the primary key, these are 2 keywords, primary key, and within brackets, like we are going to assign one of these columns. The method තුනක් හැදුවනේ නේද? මේ හදපු තුන් දෙනාගෙන් එක්කෙනෙක් තමයි අපි මෙතනට දෙන්නේ as a primary key here. Right? Okay. So let's create that thing inside our SQL. So what we are going to do here is create table. I'm going to create the class info table. So class underscore info. And I'm coming to the next line, opening the brackets. And I'm saying CID, I'm saying char 4, comma, and then I'm giving CNAME, that is char 10. Then I mean numbers decide කරන්නේ මම කියන්නේ මට ඕන විදිහට. So you can use some different things when you are creating it, right? Then TID, this is going to be char4 again, right? Which is going to act as a foreign key, but here we are not going to make anything for that. And then I'm going to add the primary key. So primary key, this is the primary key constraint, and within brackets I'm going to give CID, which is the very first field that I named here. Then I'm closing the brackets and giving the semicolon, right? So how did we do that? Create table, the table name. We have given the column names with their respective data types. And we have used the primary key keyword, and within brackets we have specified what is the column name or the name of the column that we are going to make it as a primary key, right? So let's run this and see. So it is executed. Let's see whether it is executed correctly or not. Yeah, it says create table class info, CID, and every these things are happen. So now we can't see any class table right over here because we haven't refreshed this. So we are saying refresh all. Now you can see the class table info. Let's click on that and see. So it says, oh sorry, that's a student info I have clicked. So the class info, see class info is student info අතරයි වෙනසක් තියෙනවා පේනවද? CID කියන එක underline වෙලා මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. See CID underline char, and it indicates PK, primary key, right? Then CNAME and TID is there. So but student info, we haven't said who is going to be the primary key. So it has no any primary key. But remember, there's a very important point for you to understand that a table can be created without a primary key, right? Later we can assign that. It doesn't matter, right? But to have the relationship, primary key is a must, right? So class info is created with the primary key of CID. So it is been indicated as well. Hari, මේ කරපු දේ තේරුණාද? Confirm කරන්න. Right, great. අනිත් අය? හරි, හොඳයි. ඊළඟට කතා කරන්න යන්නේ already හදලා තියෙන table එකක කොහොමද primary key එක assign කරගන්නේ කියලා. දැන් මේ table එකක primary key එකක් පස්සේ assign කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ that means we are changing the table structure. නේද? There is a table structure and we are assigning some column as a primary key. So we are changing the table structure. That means we need alter table statement, right? It is the statement that we use to change the structure of the table. So we have to use an alter table statement. So here we are going to use an alter table statement for the student info table, right? So I'm going to clear this. No, I'm going to save this as the create class info table here. Right, now I'm going to clear this and I'm going to write so this is the way they are going to assign a primary key after we create the table. So like for an existing table, right? So how? Alter table. What is the table name that you need to change? And here you are adding something, the primary key add kar. So you can choose add, then the keywords primary key, and you can say what is the column name that's going to act as a primary key. This is already in your table, right? So alter table, what's the table name? Add primary key, and within brackets, what is the primary key, right? Okay, let's run it and see. Here we are going to say alter table, alter table. Now we need the student info, student info, add, then the primary key keyword, then within brackets we are going to tell the primary key, the student info has SID. So here I'm going to tell SID as the primary key and this semicolon at the end. Remember to put the semicolon always. ඕක බලනවා විභාගෙදී, right? Semicolon එක නැත්තම් ලකුණු අඩු කරනවා, සමහරවිට ලකුණු නැති කරනවා. Right? So we said alter table, student info, add primary key. So here we run it. So it executed. There is a problem. It says key. You have an error in SQL syntax. Check the manual. Yeah. Add primary key. Let me check. කොතනද ප්‍රශ්න තිබ්බේ? SID කියලා key කියන කෙනා වැරදි කියනවා. අපි key එක පොඩ්ඩක් pass කරලා බලමු. primary එක වැඩ කරනවද කියලා. I don't think so. Oh, it was okay. Alright, maybe key එකයි වරහණයි එක ළඟ තිබ්බ නිසා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right, so remember, yes, most probably it is, yes. Key එකට පස්සේ space එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ, then after නැත්නම් මේ දෙන එකක් විදිහට සලකනවා. ඒකයි ඔය ප්‍රශ්නේ වෙන්නේ. මෙහෙම තියලා run කරාම it says now multiple primary key defines කියලා. මොකක් හරි වැරද්දක් තියෙන්නේ නැති, right. So anyway, the primary key has add from this particular place, right? Alter student, alter table, student info, add primary key SID. So what we are going to do is we are going to refresh it and see the primary key for now. So it says SID is there and char4, it's a primary key they have selected. Right. ඔය විදිහමයි foreign key එක manage කරගන්නෙත්. Right. So ඒක පෙන්නලා අපි session එක නතර කරමු. මොකද එකත් මේක කතා කරාම lazy. So to add a foreign key, right? Now this is what is called foreign key කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක උතන පොඩියට කතා කරලා තියෙන්නේ. So don't bother about it. So in this example they said table customer and table order. So in table customer, there are 3 fields, which is called SID, last name and first name. In table orders, there are order ID, order date, customer SID, and amount. Now, these are the names, or like this is the name, customer SID is the name, which indicates the SID right over here. ඒක නිසා දැන් ඔයගලන්ට දැන් මම මෙතන නම් එකම જાතිය නම් පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් මතක තියාගන්න relationship එක හදනකොට column එකේ නම වෙනස් වුණා කියන එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. Only thing is they should have the same data types and one should stay as a primary key. Right? එයාගේ නම වෙනස් වුණා කියන එක ගැටලුවක් නෑ. Right? එක්කෙනෙක් primary key විදිහට ඉන්න ඕනේ. එයා තමයි තව එක්කෙනෙක් එක්ක relation එකක් හදන්න ඕනේ. ඒතර ඒ දෙන්න identical වෙන්න ඕනේ. Right? So here in the creation of the order table එක create කරනකොට අපිට පුළුවන් foreign keys දෙන්න create table statement, create table, the table name orders. So we are defining order ID as an integer, 1 column, order date as a date, second column, customer SID as an integer, third column, which is going to act as a foreign key, but we are not saying anything in here. And amount as a double, which is a floating point value. Then we assign primary key for the order ID because its order ID is going to be the primary key of this order table. And look at the foreign key assumptions. It says foreign key and it says which column is going to be the foreign key out of these 4 columns. So it says customer SID is going to be the foreign key. And this is the important part, references. Now references says this foreign key is referring who, from which table. So references the customer table, the other table, or SID of the customer table. So customer tables SID is referring. එතකොට order table එකේ customer SID කියන කෙනා foreign key එකක්, එයා refer කරන්නේ customer table එකේ SID කියන column එක. Right? Okay, I'm quickly going to create what? SID TID. මට බැරි වෙනවා තියෙන එක create කරන්න. create statement දෙකක් කියන්න වෙනවා. Ready to create කරමු. Right, here I'm going to create the teacher info table. So I'm going to say create table teacher info. Here I'm opening the brackets, TID char 4, comma, name char 20, comma, eduq char 10, 5, comma. So I'm creating a table with a primary key. So I'm saying primary key, and within brackets I'm going to say it's going to be TID. So I'm closing my brackets and put a semicolon. So this will create the teacher info table, right? So I'm running it, so it creates. So I'm refreshing this, so you can say teacher info has created. It has TID as primary key in the edu qualification, right? So now here I'm going to create the student teacher, right? So in student teacher you can see SID and TID both are underlined in your tute එකේ අන්තිමට තියෙන tables ටික refer කරගන්න. So SID and TID කියන දෙන්නම underline වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි දෙන්නම දාලා බලමු කොහොමද හදන්නේ කියලා, right? So I'm quickly going to alter this thing. This says student teacher, so student underscore teacher. So I'm having TID and as well as SID. So I'm going to make this as SID and char 4. And the other one is hours. And that I'm going to keep it as an int. And here I'm saying primary key as I'm going to say TID comma SID, right? බලමු මේක හරියනවද කියලා. And here another thing, then TID SID දෙන්නම එකතු වෙලා තමයි primary key එක හැදෙන්නේ. හරියට අර many to many relationship එකක allowed table එක හැදුවා හා සමානයි. Fields දෙක එකතු කරලා තමයි හැදලා තියෙන්නේ. But TID and SID separately going to be foreign keys. නේද? TID කියන්නේ teacher info එකේ primary key එක, SID කියලා කියන්නේ student info එකේ primary key එක. So I'm going to define that foreign key references, I'm sorry, I have to say foreign key. What's the foreign key is going to be? So foreign key, I think it's going to be one at a time. So let's define one at a time. So foreign key TID references teacher info. Teacher underscore info TID. This should have a comma after the primary key thing, and this should have a comma too. And again I'm saying the same one, I'm going to copy down. Foreign key SID references student info. This is going to be here, student info SID. Okay, so what did we done? We have created the table student teacher, the very last table. It has 3 columns, TID, SID and hours. So TID and SID both are working as primary keys together, and foreign key They are separately are going to be foreign keys. So TID is referring teacher enforced TID, and SID in this table references student enforced SID. Let's run this. Let's hope and pray it's going to work. Oh no, there is a problem. Which is SID. Okay, I have to go through it then. Right? කමක් නැහැ. අපි වෙලාව ගිහිලා තියෙන නිසා මේ example එක ඊළඟ දවසේ කතා කරලා බලමු අපි නිකන්. No, it works. For some reason it works. හිටපු ගමන් සමහරලාට එයා figure out කරගන්න නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So create table student teacher කියන එක create කරලා තියෙනවා. So everything is happens. Let's see how it happens. Let's refresh all. So student teacher has created. So you can see here TID is PK, SID is PK. It indicates. හැබැයි foreign key එකට ඒගොල්ලෝ indication එකක් නැහැ. අපි බලමු foreign key එක test කරගන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා next week එකේ. So we have created all 4 tables right here. Now you can write the answer the questions from 1 to 10 in your tute, right? ඒක නිසා ඒක අනිවාර්යෙන් කරන්න. ඊළඟ දවසේ ඕක මම කතා කරලා කියන්නේ ලියලා තියෙන උත්තර ටික බලන්න ඕනේ මට. photos ගහලා ගෙන්න ගන්න ඕනේ. So you have to do it, right? I'm going to go through that. මම මෙතනොත් questions ටික පෙන්නන්නම්. Right? So these questions, right? First 10 question. මේ 10ට එනකම් set TID as a foreign key of class. දැන් මේකේ තියෙන එක එක වෙනස් විදිවලට මේක කියලා තියෙන විදිහට ඔයගොල්ලෝ statement එක ලියන්න ඕනේ. Right? හරි. එතකොට මේකේ තියෙන විදිහට ඔයගොල්ලෝ statement එක ලියන්න මේකේ තියෙන විදිහට SQL execute කරන්න යන්න එපා. සමහරලාට මේ foreign key එහෙම address කරන වෙලාවට table එක create වෙලා නැත්නම් ප්‍රශ්න එන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක ඔයගොල්ලෝ වෙනම try කරන්න. but මට අවශ්‍ය වෙන දේ තමයි මේ ටික ලියවිලා තියෙන්න ඕනේ. right? so ඊළඟ දවසේ මම පටන් ගන්න මෙතනින්. right? SQL ටික ලිව්වද කියලා පටන් අරගෙන එතකොට මේ කියන මෙතන තියෙන මේ list එකටම අපි ලියලා ඉවර කරන්න ඕනේ. 43 වෙනකම්. right? ඊට පස්සේ විභාගයට යන්න ඕන නම් ආයේ මේ 43 try කරාම SQL is clear. No problem. Right? All right, people. So I'm going to stop it from here. Thank you very much. Then tamat samahara ay gihilla inne. Right? So we'll meet you on next week for the same time. 9:30 නෙවෙයි 9 o'clock inne. Right? Okay. Thank you very much then. Have a nice weekend.
Sir.
Oh, Dilaka.
Sir, my secure software එකෙන් නැතුව RAM server කියලා එකක් තියෙන sir SQL වල.
අවුලක් නැහැ. අවුලක් නැහැ.
ඒක අවුලක් නැහැ නේ.
ඒක අවුලක් නැහැ. ඔක්කොම ඒකේ create කරන්න ඔක්කොම කරන්න දෙනවනේ පුතේ.
ඔව් sir. අර මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ sir කරගන්න.
No problem. අරකින් ගියාට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. No problem. හරි Dilaka.
ඉස්කෝලේ RAM server එක කරේ මම. හරි sir.
No problem. Making anything.
Hi sir, thank you sir. Hi sir.
Right, okay.
Hi sir.
Right.